Today, which is the last lecture of our class period, also the last lecture that I will give formally at Rutgers ever. You know, I may come back, who knows, who knows what will happen, guest lecture in some stupid class or whatever it is, but this is the big deal. The fat lady sings today, the swan song. This is it, guys. I hope you're not all psyched up for some incredible, dazzling, just unbelievable tour de force. Because instead what I have is, I put a lot of thought into what I would like to say today and how to use the last class. I thought it would be horrible if I just came in and said, today we talk about obsessive-compulsive disorder and the phenomenological basis of it, la-da-da-da-da-da-da, although I'm going to touch that actually a little bit briefly. Instead, I've asked students, I've kind of done a survey asking students what would be, what content would people like to hear? And what keeps coming up is this. They want to know what it feels like to be, I'm at 41 years. I've been teaching at Rutgers 41 years. I've had so many students, it's unbelievable. I counted them up this morning as I was driving in. It's about 500 to 600 a year, 41 years. It's like 30,000 students. And I realized a few years ago why it is I can't go anywhere in America without running into one of my students. You know what happens if you teach 30,000 students and they like you? They always like me for whatever reason, rightly or wrongly. They love me. But the 30,000 people graduate and they kind of like fan out across all of America or all over the world. So I can't go anywhere without being found. They still recognize me. I'm getting kind of all broken down and beaten up, so you can't understand who it is anymore. But I've gone to like coffee shops in Seattle, and the waiters say, "Oh my God, Dr. Atwood, what are you doing here? I had you in 1972." Or I go to Florida. "Oh my God, Dr. Atwood, it's you." I could go to Rome. "Oh my God, oh my God." But then, if you think about it, it has to be right, because 30,000 people, they just statistically radiate across the world. They don't all stay in one place. So there it is. So I've had, 41 years, 30,000 people. What does it mean to me, and how do I feel about retiring from teaching at Rutgers? I plan and hope not to retire from my clinical practice for quite a number of years still, whatever. So I asked myself, well, what can I say about it that would be interesting to hear, not just a narcissistic bunch of depressive baloney, maybe from me or something. I feel pretty good or pretty bad or mixed feelings and all this, which there are mixed feelings. But then as if in answer to my prayer, I was delivered a dream. So I thought I would begin telling you how it feels by describing a nightmare that I had only a few days ago that I think goes to the heart of the matter of one side of my feelings about retiring after all these years from the job that has been deeply foundational for my identity as an adult person. The dream was this. I woke up in the morning with this, and it was a horrible nightmare. And then I'm kind of stumbling into the bathroom to pee or something, wondering, why did I dream about a thing like that? My God, it was horrible. And suddenly, oh shit, I know exactly what it is. And I'm going to tell you what the dream was and what it is about, I think. But dreams are always subject to reinterpretation, so you might listen to my dream and have a whole different insight, and you might be right. Dreams are like that. You never be quite sure of what you're doing with any of them. Here's the dream. George is living in a 2-story apartment. It's his home somehow. It's not an apartment I recognize in the dream itself, but it's not strange either. It's where I belong. And I hear some noise downstairs. I'm on the 2nd floor. So I go out onto out of the bedroom door and onto the balcony above the floor below. And I see 3 big muscle-bound, ugly goons down there. And they're carrying away all my books and boxes and my computer equipment and all my art and everything that I have. I said, holy shit, what are you bastards doing down there? And one of them looks at me, sees me, and his eyes blaze with fury. He starts coming up the stairs, and I realize he's going to get me and murder me. So what am I going to do? There's got this goon coming up, they're stealing all my stuff. And I see a can of gasoline in the corner at that moment. And I pick it up and I pour it over the goon, and I have a pack of matches and I light him ablaze. So it's like a wonderful feeling of satisfaction as I burn the goon to death. But the only problem is there's 2 more goons down there still. The dream ends at that point. And so I wake up in the morning, my God, I just incinerated a goon. Why in the world am I dreaming a thing like that? It's retirement, is what it is. Because what was I doing on that very day, that afternoon? I was in my own office at Rutgers, carrying books off my shelves and putting them in boxes that are to be taken out of there. The goons symbolize parts of me in a certain way. They symbolize the reality of retirement itself. The dream is kind of a paranoid solution to a depressive kind of reaction to loss of my professional world, symbolized in the books, the computers, and all of this kind of thing. You know, like, yeah, burn those goons up. I'm not going anywhere. Leave my stuff alone, would you? But the problem is I'm one of the goons, okay? So I'm going forward anyway, but I think that's what that dream means. My dreams are like that. They're weird. Why is it burning him up as opposed to shooting him down or strangling him? I don't know why, but it's just, what do you need to do with goons? You need to incinerate them, pour gasoline on them, get rid of them. They're trying to take everything that meant anything to you. Screw those goons, burn them up. That's the feeling that's all involved there. Dream 2. I had 2 dreams that night. Arnold Schwarzenegger is central in the second dream for whatever reason, but you'll see why. It's the same darn thing with a different accent to it. I thought I would tell it to you too. It might be interesting. I'm somehow like in an airport complex or something like that, you know, like where you get a jet to go somewhere, whatever. And in any case, Arnold Schwarzenegger was there, but his name was not Arnold Schwarzenegger. His name was Abraham Abramovitz. What is that? I don't know. I'll tell you speculations about what that is, but that was his name. And he had a key to his car. Schwarzenegger did. But he had somehow dropped it, misplaced it, and it had fallen onto the floor in the airport complex. And he didn't know it, but he had no ability to get in his car and go anywhere. Oh, Abraham Abramovitz. It wasn't Schwarzenegger, but it's who it was. It was Schwarzenegger, but that was his name. And I found the key. So I went to the courtesy desk or whatever it is, and I got on the microphone like I am right now. Hello, Abraham Abramovitz. We have found your key. Attend the courtesy counter, please. So Arnold Schwarzenegger comes all muscle-bound and everything. He's all happy, gets his key back. And I'm walking with him then out to his car. He's really happy because he'll be able to go somewhere. But he sort of points at his heart like this. And he doesn't say anything, but it conveys to me my heart, the ticker. You know, he calls it the meter in the dream. The meter's running out is what he said. But what he meant, the ticker might collapse. He doesn't know how long he's going to live. And then when I thought about that dream, I thought the Terminator. The Terminator. My contract with Rutgers is terminating. So it's to do with the same kind of thing. Now, there are other associations to that dream that I'm not going to go into. But if you get Freudian about what a key might mean, you might be able to go to town with the idea of losing your key. But we don't go there. We don't go there. We follow the theme of Stop It. You remember those of you who saw Stop It? There's a place where the psychologist says, we don't go there, we don't go there. But I go there, but not for this class, we won't go there. Whatever it is with that, okay? I told the story of the fabulous Abraham Abramovitz, okay? Arnold Schwarzenegger, to another friend of mine recently. And she said she felt it had to do with my intellectual work and that it compared me to Abraham, the great biblical Abraham, who set down the religious tradition that eventually evolved into Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And that it's kind of grandiose to compare yourself to Abraham, if the dream is really doing that. But the idea was that the intellectual work that I've been involved with my friend Robert Stollerow primarily, Bernie Brandschaft, Donna Orange, and a number of others, has kind of created a new school of thought that's analogous to the fountain of the Jewish, Christian, Islamic systems. Okay, it's like an embracing system. We're all children of Abraham. And so-called phenomenological contextualism could be seen as an umbrella that includes all of psychoanalysis, all schools of thought. It allows all of them to be translated into a common language. They don't have to fight with each other. All right, so like that. So she thought it was the key, was a key to the future and a continuing devotion to that work. I don't know if that's right or not, but I thought I'd tell it to you because I love that thought quite a bit. The dream ends hopefully. The key is found. Another association I had to the dream is that if you took my personality class, you might remember my lectures on B.F. Skinner, the great behaviorist. for many years the most well-known psychologist in America. And I told the story based on accounts of many who went to Harvard and were his students there, about how he ended his classes. He would teach these giant lecture courses. He was enormously popular at Harvard. And on the last day of class, he would always say to the students the same thing. And I had this independently reported to me by many people who took his classes over different years. He would say to them, his last sentences were, "And now I have given you the key. Use it wisely." Then he would put his coat on, pick up his briefcase, and wander on out of the door. Everybody would clap and clap and clap. And don't clap for me today. I don't want any clap. I'm going to scream at you if you clap. No clapping allowed. Hope you get the clap if you clap. I'm kind of in a little bit of a mode of associating. I'm going all kinds of directions. And I want to be that way. I want to be that way and not be all too organized, which I'm not anyway. But have I given you the key? Maybe. The phenomenology is a different key. Skinner's key is the very unexciting idea that behavior is controlled by its consequences. Whether it's reinforced, rewarded, punished, whatever happens, that determines whether the behavior continues. It is such a boring principle. If it's a key to a world I don't want to go to. The phenomenology is a key to a world I do want to go to and have tried to explore and share with you guys. So there's that. All right. My own feelings about retirement are mixed. It's anticipating loss. Goons are stealing my stuff. Burn them up. Please, guys, go find those goons and kill them for me, would you? On the other hand, it's like laying down a burden, because an image came to me just a few days ago. I saw a camel. This camel was loaded up with like furniture and whole families and piles of suitcases and stuff like that. He's like trekking across the Sahara Desert with all this stuff piled up on top of him. Stumbling, barely able to walk, he's got so much weight on him. And then he suddenly has the chance to let this weight off. And I realized that weight is the weight of teaching itself. And it feels good to me to let go of it, even though there's another side that says goons are stealing my stuff. You get both sides. I'm just open to all these different things. Maybe that's what you get like when you've had 25 years or more of psychoanalysis, which I have. Your mind is just open to every kind of darn thing in the world and have every contradictory feeling there is, and you can't get rid of any of it, just flooded by the whole thing. Anyway. So much for my dreams. I wanted to give a title to the lecture today. Sometimes I like to give titles to things. It pleases me. And about three days ago, I woke up in the morning. "I've got it, Liz!" I told her. Liz is here, by the way. If you don't know, you can look around and see the hi feet. Anyway, the title was the title of my favorite movie of all time, the best movie that was ever been made, without question. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Clint Eastwood. If you haven't seen it, you're a loser. If you've seen it and didn't like it, you're a double loser. The movie is a work of sheer genius. It reveals the mythological structure of human existence in the form of this spaghetti western that is told. Anyway, so I thought I would borrow that title and use it to give a series of reflections and kind of life lessons. I'm going to overlap a little bit, if you were at the Psychi thing, I'm going to overlap a little bit with what I gave there. Today, I'm a little more outrageous today because when I was at the Psychi Honor Society induction, I had to be real careful with my language, and all the parents were there, and the last thing I wanted to do was offend anybody, and I had to be careful not to say anything against the right wing. By the way, I hate the right wing, but I can say it here. But I couldn't say that there, and I didn't use any X-rated language at all there. I can use a little bit. But the worst thing I said was darn at the Psychi thing. I can say much worse words here. But don't turn me in, please. I told you that I was turned in a few years ago. It almost killed me. Anyway. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Looking back, 41 years of misery, of joy, of everything that lies in between those two extremes. What do I want to pick out for you? Well, I thought I'd start with the ugly and end with the good. I want to be this upbeat. I want to give you something that tells you how special you guys are to me and have always been. But I want to start with stuff that wasn't so special because it relates to things that you have also experienced. So here's a story that I tell often in personality. If you're in my personality class, you'll recognize this story. If you're a psych guy, I told it there too, but I like it. I hate it, but I like it. It's an ugly, ugly story about an ugly, ugly man. Here it is. George Atwood IV. George Eliot Atwood IV. In my family, named after my father. Kind of narcissistic on my father's part. I would never name my child after myself. Christopher Douglas Atwood, I named him. Not Georgie Atwood V. What kind of an idiot would do that? My father was an idiot who did that. Anyway, so I'm saddled with the name. Trapped inside his narcissism. But anyway, here I am at 17 years old, discover the writings of Freud and Jung. And I'm not going to go into a whole deep story about all that, except to just say this. A fire ignited inside me at the age of 17, possibly when I was even still 16, I can't remember exactly when. A fire that was of passionate enthusiasm for the idea that the study of very, very, very severe mental illness might unlock the ultimate secrets of the human condition and human nature. That's basically it right there. That's what Freud and Jung are all about. That's what psychoanalysis is all about. It's a treatment pathway, a treatment method in a sense. You can use the word method is problematic, but if you could use it a little bit. But it's also a research avenue that tries to take a journey into the depths of the human soul and find out its universal structures that are there. That reached me at the age of 17 and attracted me so powerfully. I had been more or less kind of set up in the direction of going for physical science before that, maybe physics. I love physics too. It's a wonderful science. But suddenly psychology caught me, and I was a goner. And I remember, like, if a TV program would come on at that time, early 1960s, and it would be about psychiatrists or something, I would just be trembling with joy watching them. And even though the programs were often stupid, I would kind of read between the lines and get all excited about it because I kind of saw my own future there. And I wasn't able to articulate what I'm about to say now, then, but I know the idea was the same. And it was this, that in human tragedies where people fall to pieces, and severe mental illness is exactly that, the pieces into which they fall might be the ultimate constituents of human nature and the determining conditions of human existence. That was the idea. I couldn't have said it so articulately then as I can now, but I know that kind of intuition was there. So I just thought to myself, why would anyone study anything but psychology and psychoanalysis? And I thought psychoanalysis and psychology were the same thing. I didn't realize psychology was a whole other ball of wax. I just thought, this is it. I thought, this is so cool. This is unbearably cool. I just would tremble and shake and sing when I would think about it and read about it. And I started collecting books and books and books and books. So anyway, so I thought, I'm going to be like Freud and Jung, so I'll be a medical doctor, I'll get psychiatric training, I'll become a psychiatrist, and I'll spend my whole life plumbing the depths of the human soul in working with, like, the most disturbed of the most disturbed of the most disturbed people that there are. Backward schizophrenics, okay? Give them to me. Bring them to me. We'll uncover the secret of the universe in studying them. So anyway, I went to undergraduate school, University of Arizona, and I embarked on a pre-med program. And I hit a wall. And I talk about this in Abnormal too, I mean in Personality too. The wall had the words organic chemistry written on them. Organic chemistry was a killer as a course for me. I was able to do it, but it required enormous work, and I hated every bit. I don't want to ever see a picture of a benzene ring again. Okay? It showed me that the whole pre-med course and medical course involved a kind of detour away from my interests, which were in the ultimate constituents of the human soul, to do the medical training. And I always advise students, don't go to medical school unless you have in your heart a deep commitment and passionate desire to be a physician. Even if you have a long-range journey, you want to get to be a psychiatrist, don't go near that as a pathway unless you really, it's a part of your very being to become a physician. It was not part of me. I was going to be a doctor of the soul, you could say. kind of using language like that. And so it was really right for me to break away from that and become a psychology major instead. I'm about to tell you what happened to me on the day that I became one and how ugliness plays a role in this story. But before I tell you that, I thought I would also tell you Robert Stollerow, my buddy, soulmate, best friend. Dan Ogilvy's also my best friend. Kind of a tie between who's the best friend. Anyway, but he's certainly one of my two best friends. And he had the same experience. He went to Harvard, and he's so brilliant. He got straight A pluses and all this, get into Harvard Medical School. He was going to become a psychiatrist. He loved psychology, not medicine. But he thought the pathway was to go through psychiatry, so he got into Harvard Medical School. In his first semester in anatomy, they gave him an old 90-year-old man, dead man, corpse, a cadaver. And he was asked to take the arm of this cadaver and like open it up and show all the anatomical structures that were in there. So he began to work on this poor old dead guy, ripping his arm apart and all the veins and muscles and all of this, and he got halfway through it and just thought, what the hell am I even doing here? I got to get the hell out of here. And he quit medical school and went to clinical psychology instead. So I'm the same way. I just got out earlier. I didn't go all the way for the dead man's arm, but it's the same experience. Stollerow and I are kind of creatures of the subjective. We don't like the objective world very much. We hate it, the material world. We hate it. We want to talk about phenomenology, subjectivity, human experience. So that's just a huge thing in common we have. It's interesting, isn't it? Maybe you don't find it interesting, but I do when I think about it. We talk about just the tremendous commonality between us. There are also huge differences between us, and the mix of the differences and the commonalities have been the secret of our collaborative success. We've written 7 books together, and we're working on another one right now. Anyway, but back to my ugly theme. So here's George Atwood IV. Wants to be a psych major, thinks psychology is just so unbearably cool, just trembling with excitement. So I go to the psych advisor of the University of Arizona undergraduate department there, because you have to have an appointment with him to sign up as a major. So I sat down with him and he said, well, tell me, George, what's the background of your interest in our field? I said, oh, well, I discovered Freud and Jung. I'm ready to launch off into a discussion of the dreams and dream analysis and human nature and all this. And so I'm talking only for about a minute or two at the most. And I can remember this day as if it were yesterday, even though it's like 1962 is when this took place, 62, maybe early 63. The sun is coming in the window in his office, and it's kind of a first floor office in the psych building of the University of Arizona Psych Department. And I'm sitting there talking and kind of chattering about all of my excitement about the field and all that. And have you ever talked to someone about something you're enthusiastic about, and have that person, by their facial expression, begin to develop like an intense negative reaction to what you're saying? This is where the ugliness comes in. He wasn't a terrible-looking guy. I think his name was Professor Wetzel. The name came back to me recently. Wetzel was his name. Wetzel. Ugly Wetzel. Anyway, nothing against the name Wetzel. If your name is Wetzel, I don't attack your name or your background or your family. Anyway, I'm going to imitate what he was like. But he was a kind of a normal-looking guy, about maybe almost my age now, a little younger, maybe 60 or something. I'm 67. Anyway, he sat there listening like this. So tell me, George, what are the background of your interest? Blinking. I can remember his eyes blinking like that, waiting in anticipation what I'm going to say. I see Freud and Jung and dreams and human nature and all this. And I see his face go, got a little bit in. Then he got real ugly. And he goes, and he just like, it's just like that. I was thinking about this, talking about this today to you guys today, driving in this morning from Clinton. And I just remember that face. I'm a really sensitive person. I'm all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and innocent and naive and open and vulnerable, and I get this ugly face. It's branded on my brain. Like I need to have brain surgery to have this image removed. Like it was so ugly. So I finally stopped. I said, what are you responding to, Dr. Wetzel? He said, George. That's not psychology. That's not psychology. Psychology is a science. Freud and Jung, you know, that was a pre-scientific phase of our discipline. That's the precise set of words he used. We're a science, the science of behavior, and I really think you belong in the English department. And I suggest you go there, because I know that Freud's writings and Jung's thought are used in literary criticism sometimes, psychoanalytic criticism of literature. That opened the door to the fact that psychology was not what I thought it was. And it began a long lifetime battle with those who tell me that I have belonged always in the English department. Now I'm going to fast forward about 20 years and tell you what happened when I came up for tenure at Rutgers University in 1977 or 78. 78, I guess it was. The details don't matter. If you're in my personality class, you've heard all about the golden age of personality psychology, la-da-dee-da. But it was an exciting, wonderful time where, again, I was a naive young psychologist, professor, assistant professor. And the tenure system works this way. You work for 6 or 7 years in your college, and then they either give you a lifetime contract or throw you out. You're either fired or you're hired permanently. Once you're given tenure, you can't be fired anymore. You have to, like, murder somebody in full public view or rape a student for everybody could see you or something. You don't do something outrageous. Other than that, you can scream academic freedom if they try to get rid of you. So departments are sometimes very careful about who they accept. It's like a lifetime marriage to somebody or something, except no divorce is possible. And I've seen people try to get rid of professors who already have tenure. It almost always ends the same way. Giant legal battles at the end of which the university has to pay $1 million to the professor they tried to do that to, because you can't do it. On the other hand, if the crime is bad enough, you might be able to get rid of somebody. Anyway, so I thought I was a shoo-in. All my students loved me. I was the same then as I am now. My teaching ratings were sky high. My colleagues at my local college, at Livingston College, were unanimously in favor of me. I thought for sure I'm going to be given tenure. I celebrated in advance. Never celebrate in advance. Just don't, I'm just giving you some good lifetime advice for you now. Don't ever celebrate until the fat lady sings. Okay? Because life will find a way to screw you, basically. So the afternoon came, it was like April 1st or 2nd, you know, April Fool's Day. And I was waiting for the news that I was getting tenure. No question it's going to happen. I was planning to go out that night, drink champagne, maybe get smashed completely and celebrate and dance and everything else like that. And it said the door, there was a knock at the door. Knock, knock, knock. I opened the door. Dan Ogilvy's there. And his face is ashen. I won't say Dan Ogilvy was ugly, but his face was not pretty. I thought, oh shit, this is not looking like too good. He said, your tenure's been denied. And I've been asked to give the following message to you. Nothing personal, George, but your work doesn't fit into psychology in a way that the department could recognize at all. And you're advised to find another job. You have a year of grace period, but you'll need to find, you're out of here, basically. You're fired, basically, with the year's grace period. That's it. And it was just, I can't tell you how devastating that was. Why was it so devastating? Because I had been so naive and innocent, thinking everything's going to work out just perfectly. And here it just instead, the problem is I had my local group around me at Livingston College loved me, but the larger department was very conservative, experimental, quantitative, you know, Newtonian Galilean, if you know what that word means from personality psychology. And they had looked at my material, doing psychobiography, writing things like Faces in a Cloud, and they had not been able to understand that it's anything except like literature, like it belongs in the English department. So I went to the super chairman at the time, the person who was chair of all the individual colleges, overseeing all of psychology, and asked him what had happened. And he said, well, George, and he wasn't physically terribly ugly, but what he said was extremely ugly. His getup was ugly, too, because he was wearing a smock. And he was a experimental psychologist, studied the effect of lesioning the brains of chimpanzees and rhesus monkeys on their sexual behavior. Like he would put electrodes into the brains and burn out various neurological nuclei, and then study copulatory behavior as a result, and infer the function of the nuclei burned out by the deficit that arose. Like the kind of research that says, like for example, you burn out a certain nucleus in the brain of a rhesus monkey and then watch them copulate, and they copulate about 90 times faster than they did before, like thrust, 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 thrust. And so they figure the nucleus that you burned out is an inhibitory mechanism, and you make inferences like that. That was his research. And he's standing there talking to me with his smock on, with brain matter on the smock, and he says, George, holding his electrodes, we don't really recognize your work as psychology. It seems to be literature. What's wrong with this picture? You see how crazy-making that is? That was my story. It's a very, very ugly and horrible story. Now, what happened was that the next year I was given another chance, a last gasp chance to be voted in again. My friends gathered together and voted me in, and my worst enemies were out of town at a conference in California. Boy, were they mad when they came back and found out I'd been voted in, but it was too late. Once you're in, you're in. You can't get rid of the person. That's what tenure's like. And it's a really wonderful institution. You go through hell to get it, but it really does protect academic freedom, or it can. But you also install a bunch of horrible losers onto the faculty when you have that too, that you can't get rid of. So anyway, there's an upside and downside. The ugliness deepened the next year when my friend Robert Stollerow, who was on the faculty here at Rutgers, and something happened that was a terrible, terrible loss to our program, and to you guys, although you don't know about it because you never knew him. I'll make a long story short and just say that he's one of the absolutely most brilliant people I've ever known in my whole entire life. He's an original thinker. He's a dazzling scholar. He's pretty much recognized as the leading thinker of contemporary psychoanalysis, although I'm kind of up there too in a way, because we're all co-authors on all these books. But he's Mr. Psychoanalysis. And Rutgers, he'd already written 2 books and a zillion articles. He was well published, already recognized in his field. This is back in '79 maybe. And I went to the meetings considering him for tenure. Ugly, ugly guys. They were ugly meetings. And I remember the discussion of whether he should be promoted into permanent citizenship at Rutgers, basically, led by the then chairman of the clinical psych PhD program here at Rutgers, a man who hated my guts in particular already and had been out of town and was dismayed to see that I was given tenure. But he wasn't going to let Stollerow go by. So I remember him standing up and saying, Stollerow's work, although extensive, falls outside the mainstream of psychology, and the man can make no contribution to our program, and I vote against him, is what he said. If I'd had a grenade, I would have pulled the plug and thrown it right there. He's killed off, his chances are killed off, he's outside the mainstream. Is it not possible that he's outside the mainstream because he's an original creative thinker? Creativity, you're always outside the mainstream. And I've never gotten over that. He was denied tenure, kicked out of the program. He did fine, and he and I did fine. We've stayed connected and worked together, talked to each other all the time, write zillions of books together. Everything is fine, but Rutgers had a loss that is really terrible. I experienced it as a betrayal of all genuine intellectual values that I could believe in by my colleagues here at Rutgers, and I have become permanently disillusioned with my colleagues pretty much entirely in my own department. What's made it worthwhile to be at Rutgers is you guys. You know, the undergraduates have just been wonderful to work with. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But I hate my colleagues. Is it okay to say that? I hate them. Hate them. They're awful, awful. 1 or 2 are not too bad. The rest of them are zombies. Okay. Anyway, I want to say nasty things. It's on my last lecture. I can say anything I want. But don't be recording this. We'll turn it into the department. You know, Atwood's gone off the deep end again. We don't need that. But it's very, very ugly. Oh, so ugly. Stollerow being denied tenure. I'm not the one that was hurt. You are the ones that were hurt. Because he was such a gifted teacher. People would travel from all over the place to come to just sit in on his lectures. They were so brilliant. This is back in the '70s. He's better than ever now. So anyway. That's the ugly. There's a lot of ugly things that happened, but I don't want to dwell on that. I thought I'd touch the bad. Okay. I'm not. You know, I've written something on the board that I'm fond of. A quotation from my friend Carrie McWilliams, now sadly dead. graduate students are vermin, was what his famous statement was. And he said that when I first came to Rutgers back in 71 or 72. And I met him, and his wife, Nancy McWilliams, is a real close friend of mine, former student and now close friend of mine. Anyway, I didn't know what he meant by that, about graduate students being vermin, but I came to understand it over time, because I was a teacher in the graduate school and had many PhD students who I helped, or graduate students that I helped finish master's degrees and doctoral degrees from the years 72, 73 up till maybe 1986 or 7. I'm not going to tell you the horror stories that happened. I'm just going to say this. It was a nightmare unrelentingly. And I killed myself to help numerous students achieve a doctoral degree, although I wondered why I was doing this, on terrible projects that didn't really make any sense to start with, and all this kind of thing. And all I got for it all, like once in a while, one of them would come at Christmas and bring me a tie, or something like that. I would always feel like, how about $100,000? I wouldn't accept the $100,000 if they brought it, but I felt I deserved it. But you get a tie. One time a person brought me a bottle of scotch. That was a little better. So Chivas Regal, too. It was good. I drank it. So, graduate students are vermin. You don't know this, and not, every one of us in this field was once a graduate student, so we all of us, without exception, were once vermin. Undergraduates are beautiful. They're open, they're innocent, they're free, they're excited, they're totally turned on to what they're reading and studying. But when they graduate from college and enter a graduate program, they undergo what is called a transmogrification. That's a fancy word for getting ugly big time. Okay? You become a monster. Why is that? Because a graduate student is worried about his or her career, and they become single-minded. It's natural, it's normal for all things considered. You're just not that bright openness of undergraduate work. You're motivated to make your project work, to find a dissertation project, to get the thing ahead, and you turn into somebody who just makes use of faculty members and teachers to advance their own ends. And plus also graduate students are kind of in a weird in-between land of being colleagues versus being students. So you end up being friends with your graduate students and get in all kind of trouble because you're also in control of their academic fate. And all kinds of contradictions and complications can happen around that. And I finally suffered with it so badly, and I'm not going to tell you the gory stories, but there were some just terrible stories. I just said, have had it, and I resigned from all graduate teaching. And since then, I've done all undergraduate teaching, and I've never had a problem of any kind with anyone. It's been just beautiful. I love you guys, but when you turn to graduate students, stay away from me. You vermin. But you're not vermin now, you're angels. Angels turn to vermin. And once you get past the graduate school and you get yourself established, you might return to your original angelic nature. If instead you sold your soul in the meantime, and then that's a whole other problem we could get into. Okay. What else? What about this idea that psychology is a science? You know, and there's no room for literary types like you, Atwood, right? But here I am 41 years later after being a faculty member all this time. What do I have to say about that now? Here's what I have to say. When somebody comes and tells you what psychology is, what you should really do is just walk up to them real close. Like stand on their toes almost. Put your eyes like Larry David, you know, like curb your enthusiasm, and then slap them. Slap them again a couple of times and then walk away. That's a way of making a statement. You don't know what you're talking about. Psychology is not anything. It's whatever you make it. All it really is it's a weird hybrid field that mixes history and biology and anthropology and all kind of different things together. It's a collection of loose practices, approaches, methods, and what's accepted and what's not accepted shifts and changes, and it's open to transformation. And it is true that at University of Arizona, when I first went there, it was the unifying thread in the department was a commitment to behaviorism. So within that, there's not much room for psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis looks like literary criticism to these people. They can't even understand what the meaning of the term of human science would be. But there are other schools of thought that are more prominent. There were more prominent in other colleges, and the whole field is subject to historical flux and change anyway. And so the thoughts that came into my mind about this were these, that I thought about writing the book Abyss of Madness that I gave you guys to read. And I wanted to tell you something about some of the aspects of the thinking that inspired me to write it as it is. And as you've read it now, the first chapter, hopefully you guys have read that since the midterm covered it. Or did you just look at the review sheet and skip the reading? You lazy good-for-nothings. Which is what I was like too. I just would look at the review sheets and not do the reading until later, if I ever got there anyway. Whatever. I thought to myself in writing that book, I can't stand my own field. What's wrong with it that phenomenology is not the mainstream? Why isn't the phenomenological approach to psychopathology and really to personality in general, personality theory, why isn't this just the heart and soul of what the greatest emphasis is we place? Instead, phenomenology is way out on the periphery. But then I thought to myself this, that, well, it's only that way because people are kind of like giving an assent to the idea that that's the way it should be. And what if they rescind that assent, that agreement? What if they say it's something different? What can we do or say that would bring about a change and restore or give a centrality to phenomenology and peripheralize some of the things now, like the drug company approaches and all this sort of thing, in a better way? And it occurred to me, well, maybe I have more power to do that actually than I realized. And so I decided to imagine a world. I was drawing really upon John Lennon's song Imagine. You know, that's one of the most beautiful works of genius songs from the Beatles that ever was written. Imagine, imagine, imagine. You imagine a world that is not the world we live in, but you imagine its beauty. And then the fact that you've imagined it and symbolized it in a song might help that world to come into being. That was my thought. So in the first chapter of Abyss of Madness, I imagined a world where phenomenology is the center. And I said it's coming and it's happening. And I tried to picture myself as one of the people living in that world, looking back upon the present. And so a whole central section of chapter 1, you guys have read this, is a vision of the present through the eyes of an imagined future where phenomenology is central. And my hope was this, that it would be a self-fulfilling prophecy, that if I said this was happening, maybe it would happen and could happen. And here's what seems to be happening so far. That book was published last October, and it seems like it's taking off. I could be wrong, I'm going to be wishful thinking on my part, but maybe not. I keep getting letters from all over the country and all over the world. And the content of the letters is all the same. You know, one from Romania, another one from Hungary, another one from Australia, from Spain, from here, from there, from all over the United States as well. And what the letters are saying is this: George Atwood, where have you been? These words that you speak are exactly my feelings, but no one has ever been able to say them before. I feel that the things that you describe are lifted right out of my own experience. So there's like a gathering enthusiasm for this. So it might be that Abyss of Madness will help to bring about what it predicts should happen, could happen, might happen. I hope so. That would make me very happy. Not so I can feel, aren't I great because I helped bring something about. I think it just would be a wonderful gift to our field and to our culture, really. Because something is really wrong with the contemporary, emphasis on technique and methods and procedures and CBT and drugs. It feels like we're kind of a little bit in the position of the emperor's new clothes. The drug companies are just doing things that are just patently bankrupt. The science to support them isn't there, but no one's really caught on and completely brought it out yet, although it's happening. And so Abyss of Madness might help to do that. Now, I've written the names of 3 books up here. Abyss of Madness is one of them, obviously. You already have it. Here's 2 more really excellent, fine books that would be very important works in the coming phenomenological revolution. Okay? The second one is by Bernie Brandshaft, who is my close, dear, absolutely beloved friend, the only psychiatrist I have ever known that was capable of having a conversation with me that didn't end up in a fight immediately. He's a wonderful psychoanalytic psychiatrist in Los Angeles. He's very sick, but he's 93 years old. But I've known him for 30 years, and we've worked really closely together, written 2 books together, and consulted and collaborated on all kind of other things. And his life work was finally gathered together a year and a half ago and published under the title Toward an Emancipatory Psychoanalysis. Get it. Read it, study it, or I kill you. Okay? That's my way of recommending a really fine book. It's difficult. It's quite difficult to read. But what is it about? It's about the title says it all. It's a prodigious effort to help us see our way free from assumptions. This is the emancipatory part. Free from assumptions that make it impossible for us to understand one another's experience. So it's like he specializes in certain classes of assumptions that are like the boulders on the road to phenomenology. The things that make us not understand what is said to us, that make us not able to catch on to what it's like to be someone. Remember, Bernie Branchaft is the guy that said, George, the great question is this. What's that, Bernie? What is it like? What was it like to be this person? What is it like? What was it like? What happened to them from their point of view? His book is about that. The meaning of emancipatory also has to do with, it focuses on patterns that hold us captive to trauma, basically, and the conditions under which we can begin to establish a liberation from the traumatic captivities that haunt our lives. So the book is just absolutely fabulous. I adore it, I love it, I worship it. I've told him that, and so it's really cool. And then a third one from Stollerow, my friend, World Affectivity Trauma. Also, it's a must-read. It's deeply philosophical in huge parts. It touches Heidegger, Martin Heidegger's philosophy, quite profoundly, and includes, as one of its chapters, something I co-authored with Bob, along with Donna Orange, a kind of psychoanalytic, psychobiographical exploration of how it is that Heidegger, the greatest philosopher of the 20th century, arguably at least, fell into the Nazi Party. We tried to interpret the meaning of his Nazism and understand its relationship to his philosophy. So the book is just absolutely fabulous. And it's all part of, the term we have been using for our work at this point is phenomenological contextualism. But all that word means is we're interested in people's experience and in the context of what people experience. That's all. So this class has been phenomenological contextualism from the beginning, what we've been doing. Okay? So there's that. World Affectivity Trauma. La-da-dee-da. Graduate students are vermin. The good, the good. Let me talk about the good. You need the good. If you guys don't get the good, guess what? You're screwed. But sometimes people don't even realize the good is out there to be found. And you kind of stumble and trip and walk through your lives not aware that a loss has occurred because you've never known what it is you've lost in the first place. But one of the potential losses would be a truly great teacher, a mentor figure that you can identify with. I have been the mentor to a number of people, maybe to some of you, and that's wonderful if you've got something from me, but you need as much as you can get. Many people never have a true mentor. What is a mentor? This is something I talked about at the Psychi thing a little bit. A mentor figure is not just somebody who says all kind of cool things. You say, oh, I'm jazzed up, I love this, I really like that, isn't George great, or whoever the mentor might be. A mentor is also somebody who touches you and transforms you and releases you into yourself so that potential lying inside you that otherwise wouldn't be activated does get activated. And you become capable of thoughts and ideas and developments and aspirations that you didn't even know, perhaps didn't even suspect might have been there. It brings out, you become more wholly who you can be through the intervention of someone who's truly, a mentor transforms you and opens you, is what I think. Okay? I didn't have a mentor until I already had a PhD. All I had was teachers. The teachers were the guys that stood up in front of the class and gave lectures, but they might as well have been robots with special devices recording inside. Push the button. Here comes the lecture. Blah, 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 blah. The assignment is due when? I thought teachers were the guy that stands up in front. I didn't know what a mentor was. Somebody who just blows you away and revolutionizes your thinking and opens you up to yourself. And I found two of them, actually. So I feel like I'm a weird combination of two things. One is I had one of the worst educations of all time, just memorizing a zillion books, enough to fill this room to the ceiling. That was my bad education. PhD, came out with that. And then suddenly I had the best education in the world, not one but two brilliant, inspiring, freeing mentors, Austin Delorier and Sylvan Tompkins. One other thought about, I might as well just say the dark side of a mentor too, because I like to always talk about that. Mentors are great, and you worship the ground they walk on, and you become like them, you turn yourself into a little mini version of them. You adopt their sense of humor, their style of dress, their way of talking, their jokes, everything. You become a little copy, a little clone of your mentor. It's normal, because you love them so much and you identify with them. But they're kind of surrogate parents.